Do you want to learn the secrets of printing PETG? Well, stick with me because in this episode, I'm going to share my secrets with you guys. So let's jump into this together. Welcome to this episode of DIY3DTech.com. In this episode, I'm going to talk about my secrets to printing PETG. I love this plastic. It's my go-to plastic for anything that I need durable or I need precision with, and I just love this stuff. So the other thing before we get into this I want to mention is it's also a very clean plastic in comparison to the styrene-based plastics like HIPS or ABS. So that's another reason I like working with it, and you guys should too. So how do I print this stuff? Well, the first thing I start with is I give the bed a little bit of extra space between the hot end nozzle. I typically use a card. This is about 0.30 thickness card. So I give it probably about an extra 0.1 millimeters of space for it to lay down the plastic. Now this is a very viscous plastic, so you don't want to really push it down to the bed. You want to allow it to flow. It's very sticky, so you won't, have a big problem. I find that if I really push it down, then I get these nerds, and the hot end catches the nerd, pulls up the print, etc. So give it a little bit of space to breathe. As we're talking about the bed, the other thing I do is I use this blue painter's tape, or I print on the surface. Now, one of the things you might notice down here, I've still got the black diamond bed, or basically it's one of those big glass print surfaces on here that I've placed a Bill-Tack knockoff sheet on top of. You'll notice the haziness over here because I typically will use a glue stick if I print directly to this, but I go back and forth between using a glue stick, a purple glue stick on the Bill-Tack surface, or the blue painter's tape. I find I get a little bit better finish with the blue painter's tape, and I get a little bit easier pull off with this, and it's typically cleaner because I just throw this tape away afterwards. So that's one of the other big hints is, if you're doing this, stick with either the blue painter's tape or go with the glue for ease of release. Now the piece also with this is I only print PETG on this because this really messes up the bed for any other type of plastic. So this printer is dedicated to PETG, and I would really suggest that if you're going to be doing something like this, stick with one printer for PETG, etc., or else you're going to have, a lot of work cleaning it up in between prints if you want to switch back and forth. The other thing is I print with this bed pretty hot. This bed is at about 87 degrees C, and I found that works really well for me. And again, back to this glass bed which is underneath here, this really helps maintain the temperature of this, and it really helps prevent warping because PETG does not warp nearly as bad as ABS, but it will warp. So again, the higher heat, especially for the longer prints, this print will take at least 8 hours to run, and if you don't keep it hot, especially this is in a climate controlled area, but it's not in my house, it's in my workshop. I keep the temperature about 70 degrees Fahrenheit in here, and I will get warping issues if I don't keep this at a higher temperature and keep this temperature up, because this is also an open frame print, as you can tell. That's the other thing that I like about this JG Aurora is it's a 24-volt unit, so again, it keeps the temperature of this bed up there and pretty constant, especially for being such a large bed. Because the other piece is, you notice I have a silicone sock here. I'm printing this at 240 degrees C. PETG is typically a very viscous plastic, so it takes a lot of heat, or a fair amount of heat, I should say, probably not a lot of heat, but you also want to keep it within a very tight temperature range to get a good result, and this helps. Now I also have converted this, it's a Bowden extruder, obviously, or Bowden with Bowden hot end, is I have the Capricorn tube in here, and that really works great and very important because it doesn't clog up down here. The other piece I want to talk about, speaking of clogging, is retraction. Retraction, I'm running 6.5 millimeters at 50 millimeters a second, so very fast. I also, depending on the part, kind of structure how my retract's set up, but I find that if I retract at those parameters, I get really good results. But again, you want to watch that you don't have a ton of retracts, or you may run into some clogging issues. but for me, that's been pretty good. Now, speaking of that, I also want to talk a second about slicers. So I hate CURA. I'm not a big fan of CURA to begin with. I do use it here and there because I am lazy sometimes and it's easy to use. But for PETG, I have just had terrible luck. Why? I really don't know. I use the KISS slicer to do all my slicing for PETG, and it comes out flawless. Does an excellent job. I don't know why, but it works for me and I've just stuck with it. So those are my big combination secrets to this. Now the other pieces I want to talk about is speed. You'll notice that this is going rather slow. With PETG, again, it's a very viscous. You can't push it as fast as PLA, or at least I have not found that I can push it as fast as PLA. So I slow this down where I'm typically maybe at 60 millimeters a second, I'm around 40. Now, I probably could push this to 50, but again, when I'm printing something like this is an end-use part. This is going to go in service, so I want high quality. So I'm willing to go slower to get the finer detail, which this is a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. And I've had very good luck at 0.4, and I'll talk about the larger nozzles in a minute. But at this speed setting, I typically go first layer at about 30, and then I go the rest about 40. Might push it to 50 depending upon the quality or the type of design. You'll notice that this has a pretty tight infill, and it's got 2 millimeter shells on this. So again, I want things to go down very nice, and it also has some interesting detail around the sides, and this is a functional part, so quality is important. So I slow it down. You should slow it down too if you want quality. Travel's about 100 because who cares, really about travel. Infill, I keep about the same. I still do that about 40. You can see it doing the infill here. And again, for me, it's all about getting a quality product out of this. Now, I have used this with 0.6 and 0.8 millimeter size nozzles. I don't feel as comfortable with the results. Obviously, when you go with the larger nozzle, you're going to lose some of the detail. My hand gets bumped by the bed. And that's okay sometimes, but I just don't feel I get as resilient of a product out of it. So again, these are end-use products for me, so I'm willing to spend the extra time to go with the 0.4 nozzle, and I feel that's a real good balance. I would not go with less than a 0.4 nozzle either, because again, how viscous the plastic is. So these are my basic tips and tricks to how I print PETG, and I print a ton of it, and it, 99.99% really comes out well. So the other piece is I've already mentioned. I think having a printer set up to run PETG is another important factor, because this one's always ready to go in PETG. It's tuned for PETG, and I'm not switching back and forth between other plastics. So I think that's another pretty good tip. So if you have some additional tips which I didn't cover, please hit me up in the comments below and share those with me. I'd be interested in hearing what you guys have to say. And with that, Swag Shop's up there, subscribe over there, and we'll see you guys in the next video where we print something else cool. And we'll probably be talking about this. So take care, and we'll see you guys later. Cheers.
Please click right below and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on all